Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino21 here, back with another deck profile for you all. So what I have here is my Blangdmire deck updated for set 4. This deck is easily my favorite deck for competitive play coming out of set 4. It really checks a lot of the boxes that I really enjoy most from a competitive deck. It features card removal for your opponent, some degree of guard restriction with its divine skill, and one of the most secure win conditions I'd say in the game when you have everything going for you. And with the inclusion of Vadrock Dragon, of course the featured support card for this deck in set 4, this card itself has made this deck even better, to where I would regard this deck as one of the best decks in the format right now after set 4, even going into set 5. So overall, I've just been very pleased with the deck. There are different variations you can go about, which I will go over after I show you guys my deck. And there's always room for tinkering overall, so I'll definitely be sure to showcase all those different options for you guys. But for now, this is actually what I've been testing, and it feels really great. What I will say is overall, my focus of the deck is trying to have Vadrock Dragon to be as consistent as possible on a game per game basis, because in my opinion, I think Vadrock Dragon is the most important card in this deck now, as he is what enables you to create high potent turns to really try and secure a lot of wins when you're in the right position for this deck. So without further ado, let's actually get to it. So the ride line itself, there's really no changes. Grade 0 obviously could be anything what you want. The ride line, to be honest, I will say you can really do or die behind this ride line for the RNG factor behind it. In my personal experience, from playing this deck even before set 4, for about a few months now, most of the time in games where I miss on the ride line and I don't really hit well to get those extra card draws from it, I usually end up fighting a uphill battle from there, just because I'm trying to fight to try and gain some soul resource so that I can still pay for the cost of Blangdmire. Or I have games where if I'm able to hit well, at least get the extra card draw for the grade 1 and the grade 2, I found myself in a really comfortable, secure position, and I would say the vast majority of the times I end up winning the game. So this ride line can be hit or miss. It's really high or low, but I'm definitely ready for a new ride line to be featured eventually, just to give us some more options. But in case you guys don't know what the ride line does, just as a reminder, for the grade 1, when it's rode upon by the grade 2, you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Everything grade 1 or higher goes into the soul. It's not optional, by the way. And if you put 2 or more, you draw a card, and you bottom deck the remaining cards that were not grade 1 or higher. Grade 2, same thing. When you ride on top of him, reveal top 3. The difference is you shuffle your deck rather than just bottom decking. So that's the key difference. But yeah, the ride line is still really good, but like I said, it's kind of like a love-hate relationship, honestly, when it comes to it. So the grade 3s, it's pretty simple this time around. We have the 3 Blangdmire, because Persona Riding is way too important in the deck, and Bracing Angel Ladder. So Bracing Angel Ladder, I'd say, is a really good card for any deck that is pretty field reliant, and especially with this deck more than ever. Your goal of this deck is to try to assemble an ideal field featuring key cards such as the Vadrock Dragon that I just mentioned, and from there you're just trying to get that setup and maintain that setup so that you can make those big pushes towards your opponent. So Bracing Angel Ladder is really good against any matchup that features field removal that can threaten your board setup. So obviously it's really good against the mirror match, good against Shoujo Doji, good against pretty much anything in that regard. And worst case scenario, even if you are not facing an opponent playing a field removal deck, being able to go into the soul and draw makes it never dead, and it's still going to be beneficial to just feel the soul. If you don't have Bracing Angel Ladder, Caliburn is never a bad choice either. Just being able to draw 2 cards or go into the soul for counter charge is always good. Or if you want to play the cup, to assure Persona Riding, I think all are great choices. I just find myself just liking Angel Ladder a lot, and especially with how this deck is made, I'm okay. I can actually assure my I have a little bit more assurance with my Persona riding with the construction of this deck, which you'll see later. So I just like bracing Angel Ladder a lot. And also in my locals, a few locals actually, I faced 2 Shiranui players, and I pretty much was able to bracing Angel Ladder them to pretty much buy 1 turn of them doing nothing to me. And then of course when you Divine Skill with Blangdmire, that's like another turn of them not really being able to do much against you. So it's really good in that matchup. Now, Blangdmire, just a refresher for what he does. He does really good beneficial skills. I like this artwork as well. It's really, really nice artwork. Although he has a lot of stuff going on here, it's kind of hard to see, but I don't know. I just like this this aesthetic of it. Call me edgelord, whatever. Anywho, so first skill, when he attacks the Vanguard, you can bind 2 or more cards from your soul face down. If you bound 2, you can draw a card, and if you do 4 or more, your opponent has to choose 2 of the rear guards to bind face down, and then he will get +5 for every 2 cards in your face down until end of turn. So ideally the magic number is 4. Every turn you want to try and bind 4 so that you can just try to get some card removal from your opponent. And although they get to choose, it's still fine. 2 cards is still 2 cards, I'd say, and then that power boost is really essential. That's pretty much the whole goal of the deck, is just try to fuel up your soul as much as possible. You do have ways to toolbox from your soul, and then ideally by your second grade 3 turn, or basically your turn 4, you should be ready for his Divine Skill, which is Divine Skill is the main feature of the deck overall. So at the beginning of the guard step of the battle that he attacked, if your bind zone has 8 or more face down cards, you can have him gain 1 extra crit, and then set the guard restriction to your opponent where they cannot call or play sentinels from hand until end of turn. This also includes the blitz order as well, just in case anyone gets confused. So you make sure you want to make that clear to your opponent if they're not familiar with Blangdmire. And of course, he does nullify your opponent's Vanguard's abilities until the end of their next turn. So, you know, Raziel shuts out the Raziel to possibly 6 damage, heal you with their Divine Skill, and pretty much any other abilities your opponent's Vanguard may have that features during your turn, like if they have some defensive skills. And the only way for your opponent to bypass that is if they can rewrite the card to pretty much give themselves a new unit on their Vanguard, which will cancel out that part of the Divine Skill. But nonetheless, this is what really allows you to make some really big key pushes, hopefully by turn 4 against your opponent, and it's really the main win condition. And in my opinion, as I said earlier, I think when you have everything going for you as planned and you have all your pieces set in place, this is easily one of the best, if not you can argue the best deck in just getting the win secured when you're in a ideal position to take advantage of the Divine Skill. So in a perfect world, we would always try to have our opponent at 4 damage by turn 4, and you pretty much will lock in the game at that point. Whenever I've ever got my opponents in positions like that, I pretty much always lock in the game. It's not always going to happen that way, but that's kind of like the best case scenario you always like to be in. Now next is grade 2s. We of course have our, what I would say, the non-negotiables. You have to run this at 4. We have the 4 Vade Rock Dragons, 4 Zamoogs. So these I'd say are the non-negotiables for 4-ofs. These 2 are like part of the win condition of the deck. So ideally, of course, everything is centered around the Divine Skill of Blangdmire, but what really makes this deck powerful are these 2 cards itself. So Zamoog, just a refresher for what he does. When he's placed on rear guard circle, you can counterblast 1, reveal top 3 cards of your deck, and put up to 3 of those cards into soul. Shuffle the rest, draw a card if you put a card into soul. So Zamoog is really good for deck compression. I think what I really love about this deck compared to what I used to be a long time Dark Irregulars player, and what I really appreciate with this deck in comparison to Dark Irregulars from the past is I love the selective soul charging that you have. which is kind of like a feature from Pale Moon as well. So it's a little bit of best of both worlds in that regard, but the deck compression can be pretty insane for this deck, you know, if you have all your pieces at the right time. But yeah, Zamoog is just really good to play by turn 3, get some soul set up, and nice deck compression, and the card draw is very huge. But then what makes him part of the win condition is the second ability when he attacks. If you have a grade 3 or greater Blangdmire as your Vanguard, you can Energy Blast 3 and he can gain +5 and a crit. So him being able to gain a crit I think is key, because not only is it a win condition, I think it's more of an added reach, of course, to try and make that big push to your opponents on key turns. But also, like, even playing him early game can help try to either pressure your opponent's hand early on defensively to try and just not take 2 damage from him, or you end up landing and get 2 free damage. So whenever you face Blangdmire, every damage matters. So there's a lot of pressure that this card can present itself, while also providing some additional value for you as well. So easily one of the key grade 2s in this deck. And then we have Vaidrock Dragon, which definitely he's become my favorite card in this deck, because I mean he's really what makes everything happen and really ties everything together for this deck. So I kind of see him as the glue of this deck. So what Vaidrock Dragon does is when he's placed on Rearguard Circle, other than the battle phase, you can Soul Charge 1, and then you can Counterblast, and you can call a grade 2 or lower card different from him from the Soul. And really, really good just to toolbox from the Soul. That's a really nice thing from him. I wish he can call himself, but I guess that would be a little bit unfair, so there's some balance in that regard. And then his continuous skill is what really makes him a very powerful card, is during your turn, he gains plus 10,000 for every 4 face down cards in your bind zone. So on your turn 3, on your first usage of your skill with Blangdmire, he's going to be a 20k base, and then by turn 4, on usually your divine skill turn, he'll be a 30k base. So that is huge. Now you're going to see in a moment that there is a way to make him a booster as well. And that's really, him and Zamoog are pretty much the partners in crime in that regard. So really, really love this card a lot. And I think he is a huge missing piece that this deck had for a bit, as far as having a very, very strong win condition to back your divine skill. So let's put these guys to the side a little bit. Now for the remainder of the grade 2s, we have the 4 Tiskars. I originally was thinking that maybe she should have been a non-negotiable, but I think honestly she could be optional in the deck. You don't have to run her. There are some cases, and there's even some builds that I did where I didn't feature her because I just want to dedicate all my energy to Zamoog. Because there are ways to multi-attack with them, or if you want to have multiple Zamoogs out and just try to pressure your opponent as much as possible. But I still like the early card draw that energy cyclers, give you. And also maybe there's cases where maybe there's not worth expending a lot of energy on Zamoogs. So you maybe want to save your energy as a defensive option for Tiskar. And Tiskars usually are not too dead for me, even in the late game, because you can still call it down to be an attacker. It's not a big deal. And there were some rare occasions where I needed like some emergency soul charging just to hit the right soul count to use Blangdmire. So I was able to like call her with some spare energy I had and counterblast and get a soul charge going. I don't think she's like a mandatory card, and she's really expensive right now, so if you can't afford, to get her, that's understandable. But I really like her in the deck, but there are definitely other alternative options you can go with if you just don't have her. But I like her so far. And then this next part of the grade 2s, this is what I would call the order package, basically, because all these cards really work interactively with each other. So of course we have the, what do you call them? Sagacious Schemer. So we have 3 Schemers, which on play, when he's placed on Rearguard Circle, you can Soul Blast 1 and search your deck for a set order. Ideally, you want to look for this one, the Game of the Underworld. So Game of the Underworld, he is a set order, so you play him in your order zone and it stays there for the rest of the game. So at the beginning of your battle phase, you can choose one of your back row rear guards and give it boost until end of turn. So as you can obviously tell, the whole idea is to have this so that you can make Vaidrock Dragon a booster. Having Vaidrock Dragon as a booster I think is key, because that way you can have him hide in the back row so your opponent can't attack him, and the only way to get rid of him is to have some type of removal. So that's pretty much the whole concept with this deck, is try to get your set orders in place, get your Vadrock Dragons, and just profit from there. So that's pretty much the whole premise here compared to previous builds before set 3, because you didn't really run this package prior to set 4. And then to go with it, we have, of course, the Dual Nation Dargage. So Dargage, I really love this card. I don't think this is a mandatory card. There's actually plenty of lists that's been topping regionals here in North America that doesn't feature this card. And I think that's okay too. Like I said, there's different variations you can go about. But what I love about this card is that it offers a few benefits that I think also kind of keeps the deck flowing for me. For my main goal, as I said in the beginning, to just assure my Vadrocks, because he is way too important in this deck to me. So when she's placed on Rearguard Circle from hand, you can check cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of set orders you have plus 1. So if you have 1, a set order at least, you could check 2, and then etc. as you have more. And then you can have, well, it's mandatory actually, to take one of those cards, put it into Soul, and then as an option, you can counterblast 1, and you can either search for a grade 2 or greater from your Soul and add it to hand, or you can get a set order. So she's good in assurance, just like in case you soul charge your set order, to just get that to hand just to make sure. Or as you see, there's a huge plethora of grade 2s that are essential. Primarily Zamoogs or Vadrocks is what you want to get. So she's just really good just to try and make sure I get my Vadrocks in case I soul charge the Vadrock. And she can also pick up a Blangdmire as well. So that's why I said earlier, she is a unit that can assure either you get your Vadrocks, or it can help try to maintain your ability to Persona Ride, because Persona Riding is still very important in this deck. And then last for my final grade 2s, I do have 2 Serban Falcratia, or I just call her Maid. So I'd say this is kind of like the tech slot in the deck for me. I'm still experimenting around, but originally I ran, like 4 Schemers and 4 Dargage, which I think is perfectly fine. I always say, like, the simpler that your deck can be and the more redundant you can make it, the better off you'll probably be, as long as you're not interfering with your win conditions. So that's still an option. But I decided to go with 2 Maids, basically, because she offers a few benefits of the deck that was missing prior that I kind of missed. So what she can offer is the ability to retrieve from the drop zone. So she can add Soul for me without having to sacrifice my deck count, because as you know, the longer the game goes, the smaller that deck gets, and there is risk for decking out. So she gives me that option. She can allow me to, let's say if I go second, turn 3, I can just call her down, and she become a good target for restanding, to restand to get 2 quality hits in. And if I happen to lose my Vadrocks early, I can just try to shove my Vadrocks into the Soul, which will set up Dargage the next turn to grab. So like I said, this is a tech slot. I may end up going back to 4 Schemer for Dargage. There could be other cards to try out, but I've definitely been liking this a lot as a nice option for me. So she's been working out very great. But yeah, really good card. So I really love this grade 2 lineup overall. It offers a lot of consistency for me, which is really what I wanted from this deck. Now grade 1s. Nothing too exciting. Obviously the 4 perfect guards with the Sanctitude. And then you have 3 Evoke Alchemist. So I've actually, because I run a high count of the order package, I think 3 is just fine for me. Oftentimes I'd say you could still run 4 as well, because he could still be a 13k booster on the side, which is fine, so you don't have to rely so much on the set order. I may end up going back to 4 as well. So like I said, there's a lot of tinkering I'm still going around with, but I found 3 to be just perfectly fine, as you really just dedicate him to be your Vanguard booster. So what he does is, he essentially is a 15k booster when boosting your Vanguard, 13k booster when he's on the side, as long as your Vanguard is Blangdmire. And when he boosts your Blangdmire Vanguard, you can counterblast 1. And if you have 4 or more if you have 4 cards face down your bind zone, you can restand a rear guard. And then if you have 8, you can give that rear guard plus 15. So this is really key as far as enabling your columns, particularly your Zamoog and or Vadrox, to really hit those essential numbers. Ideally, what you're going for is Vadrox boosting Zamoog, and then on your divine skill turn, you swing with Zamoog first, unboosted, you attack with Blangdmire, and then use a skill, and by then, for your turn 4, you should have 8 bound cards. So you'll be able to stand up Zamoog and give him plus 15. So if you Persona Road and have 8 bound, and you're able to give him plus 15, including Zamoog's skill, you're going to be hitting 70k critical 2 on this column, which is major. Huge number. So that is Evoke Alchemist's role in this deck. He's another essential card for this deck. And even if you're not like divine skilling, I mean, once you get past like turn 4, I mean, he's still good just to get, a restander, just to be able to restand a rear guard and gain extra power, which is still really good. And especially if you can get, you can push Vadrox to the front. He's already a big beater already, so getting 2 attacks off him is still really huge. And he's the only way that you can actually have 4 attacks in this deck. So, in this meta, if you can't do 3 big huge attacks, you got to do at least 4 attacks. So he's what allows you to do that. Triggers, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We have 8 crit, 3 fronts. I definitely prefer fronts. I don't like draw triggers. I definitely tried draw triggers a few times and it just made me really uncomfortable. I definitely had 2 occasions where I almost decked out. I like the fronts a lot. You do enough dead drawing in the deck that you have chances to draw into the fronts and still give you shield value. So I definitely recommend fronts in my opinion for heal triggers. And then the OT, I'm really back and forth with the OT. There's different options for it, but for now I'm running the blue OT. I think the blue OT is blue OT is a really good OT to go with if you're just looking for a 9th crit in the deck and just something that is just solidly beneficial at all aspects of the game. Just getting an extra crit early game is still really good. Getting critted by Blangdmire early game sucks for your opponent, so that's always good. And being able to salvage a card from drop zone, will never be bad. It gives you a chance to recycle your Vadrox if they end up dying, or maybe recycle anything. It's the same benefits as always. Now, the Dark States OT I think is still a really great option. With the Dark States OT, of course, if you can get this early, like especially within the first 4 turns, you're pretty much golden. And I found that in games where I'm able to get this early game, I usually end up winning because it just gives Blangdmire such high reach as far as win condition, and now your opponent doesn't really have a comfortable damage point, to deal with Blangdmire, because a lot of times your opponents will try to stay at 2 damage so that they can try to just no guard your Blangdmire, but now you just take that option away from them if you get this early. I think the only reason why I just took this out of the deck last minute with this build for now is that I don't really find this card to be very great in the late game. I've definitely had cases in the late game where I hit this. My opponents already were, I kind of hit this card, but it wasn't very impactful for me. So, it's hit or miss. I think this card is still really good. I will still contemplate like putting this in, but so far I'm experimenting with the blue OT, and I really like just the overall general benefits it gives so far while still giving the crit. And then the last OT option that I really like is the yellow OT. Yellow OT is really great for, I think it's good in all stages as well. Extra card draw is nice that it can give you, and being able to just retire all of your opponent's rear guard is fantastic against, let's say, like an aggro matchup that your opponent's playing an aggressive deck and they're aggroing you early. So this is really good. I know one of my buddies is playing it and he really likes it a lot. I'm still a little bit iffy, with it, but this card is still really good. I'm still contemplating this as well, because especially in turns of your opponent's on your divine skill, your opponent's trying to guard the Blangdmire raw, and you're just, basically you just throw away all their guards, they eat the Blangdmire, and now they don't have any cards left to deal, they can't even deal with 100 million on a divine skill turn. That's the funny thing with Blangdmire. That's really what gives some cheese, to this deck, is the fact is that if you hit an OT during the divine skill, you pretty much auto win. So there's that. There's still other OT options. I think there's the red OT as well, which I think is good. If you are not playing Tiskar, there's flexibility with there too as well. But these are kind of like the 3 that I'm kind of testing around. So that's the deck itself. Now to go over real quick the options, there are different options, or what I say packages, that are available for Blangdmire. Particularly, as you probably noticed, I don't play Colossus in the deck as of right now. I really still wanted to play Colossus in the deck coming into this, because of course he was a staple in the prior builds. But I think the main thing that I had trouble with is his consistency as far as being able to get him off. Especially what I liked is that he kind of works as another like draw cycler, you know, for the ride deck, from the ride deck, because I usually like to discard him and then I play one of my drop zone retrieval cards like the Maid, or as I see here, the Butcher. So Maid and Butcher is basically what I would say is the drop zone retrieval package, which I ran about 5 or 6 in combination of these two, between these two in prior build. So it made it very consistent to always have Colossus going off. But then I had some awkwardness because you have to run the order package in this deck. I couldn't really feature 5 to 6 of the drop zone retrieval, so I usually can only run 2. So then I ran into a little bit of some awkward consistency issues, especially going into late game, and you know, I'm not able to kind of like fire off Colossus as easily. But some people do like it. And what I found is that there are different packages, of course, you can run that can offer different benefits that are, you know, that's really a preference for you. But it's just not feasible to run like all these type of packages at the same time. You really have to pick and choose what you prefer. So obviously with the order package, like I said, it's not required to play Dar Gauge. So you can like take out the Dar Gauge, you can maybe cut down the order to like 2 and 2, and then you'll have the room, you have like 5 slots you just open up. You could just run like 2 Butchers and like 3 to 4 Colossus as well. So that's definitely an option I tinkered with as well. But I think overall I've settled with the order package like this, because like I said, I kind of just want a very boring, simple, redundant deck this time around. Because my theory is like the simpler your win con is, the simpler and redundant the rest of the build should be to revolve around it. I don't like to try and do a little bit too much with it, you know, like I don't want to overcomplicate a deck that's supposed to be simple inherently, but that's just my preference, you know, like everyone has their own playstyle. So really just to show you guys real quick before I let you go, so ideally the end game, what you really want as far as your setup is, where are ya? He is hiding from me. Where'd you go? Oh. So you have your Blangdmire with your Evoke. You have your Vadrock column basically with, usually you have your Zamoog boosted. And then you probably have like your Schemer on this side. So like early game, like by turn 3, you can really have a board like this. And I really like just doing this with the Dar Gauge here. So this is kind of like my flex column here. This will be like the dedicated Vadrock column. Turn 2 is very interesting because what I really like going turn 2 is, you know, you have your turn 2, you go Schemer, you search for the set order, you set it down, and then playing Dar Gauge here. Like if you, let's say, soul charge something that you want, such as Vadrock, maybe Tiscar for your next discard for riding, or Blangdmire in soul, you can then just play the Dar Gauge. You will most likely have 1 counterblast available, add another card, and then you could fish it out, and then you have a 25k column here. Because, oh yeah, because when you target him for Game in the Underworld, he does gain +5, so it's 25. And what's nice is, you know, these are such throwaway cards, because once you can search your Game in the Underworld, you can honestly just push him up and just use him as attacker and then save your Dar Gauge. So I just like this early game though. And then if you have another counterblast, you can play Vadrock, call something else out from soul, and just have 3 attacks out the get-go turn 2. So that's really one big change I like from this deck compared to previous decks, is that there's a lot more aggressive options you have turn 2 to try and push a lot of damage early on, because pushing damage is very important, but you definitely want to do it efficiently as well. So yeah, there you go, have it guys. That is the deck itself. Really enjoying this deck a lot, and it's just a deck that I just feel very safe and secure going into, like, you know, in a competitive environment for, as I just feel very secure in closing out games when I can put myself in position to do so. So let me know what you guys down below think, and Bling Bros unite. See you guys.